The call did not destroy him immediately. That was the dangerous part. Real betrayal never arrives like a gunshot. It arrives quietly, politely, almost gently, slipping into a room like smoke before you even realize you are choking on it. By the time the truth reached him, the damage had already begun somewhere far beyond his control, in meetings he was never invited to, in contracts signed behind polished glass doors, in conversations held between executives who smiled while deciding whose names still mattered and whose could disappear without consequence. And when the truth finally landed in Jamie Dornan's hands, it came in the most brutal way possible. Not through Dakota. Not through someone loyal. Not even through a warning. It came through the industry itself. Through whispers. Through headlines. Through that cold Hollywood machine that turns private heartbreak into public entertainment before the people involved even have time to understand what they've lost. The house was silent when he found out. Not peaceful silent. Empty silent. The kind of silence that feels heavier than noise because it leaves too much room for memory. The glow from his laptop painted pale shadows across the study walls while unfinished notes sat scattered around him like fragments of a life he no longer recognized. Outside, Los Angeles stretched endlessly beneath the fog, glittering and lifeless all at once, a city built entirely on illusion. And maybe that was the real problem. Jamie had spent years believing he was different from the rest of them. Different from the actors obsessed with fame. Different from the stars who traded loyalty for headlines. Different from the people who weaponized intimacy whenever the cameras stopped rolling. But Hollywood punishes anyone naive enough to believe they are immune to its rules. The message was brief, clinical, almost casual. Dakota Johnson attached as lead actress and producer for upcoming independent drama based on an original concept currently in pre-production. The title alone made his chest tighten. Because he knew that title. He knew every syllable of it. He had carried that story around in his head for years, long before producers touched it, long before executives calculated its market value, long before journalists transformed it into another glossy industry announcement. That story belonged to a quieter period of his life, back when exhaustion and ambition still lived side by side inside him. Back when he and Dakota still spoke like two people hiding from the madness around them instead of feeding it. At first, he convinced himself there had to be some misunderstanding. An overlap. A coincidence. The industry recycles ideas constantly. Stories drift through Hollywood like ghosts. But then he opened the article. And that illusion collapsed within seconds. The synopsis was his. Not similar. Not inspired by. His. The emotional architecture. The dialogue style. The central relationship dynamic. Even the thematic line he once scribbled into a notebook during a late-night conversation over dinner. Sometimes love survives by pretending to die. He remembered Dakota laughing softly after he read it aloud, teasing him for sounding too poetic, before admitting it was her favorite line in the entire script. Now it sat inside an industry article stripped of context and ownership, repackaged like a product ready for market. That was the moment the room changed. Because anger is easy to survive. Rage burns hot and fast. But confusion? Confusion poisons everything. It forces you to question not only what happened, but whether the entire relationship was ever real to begin with. Jamie sat motionless for nearly a minute, staring at the screen while his mind replayed years of conversations in brutal detail. Every shared idea, every private discussion, every promise spoken during those strange years after 50 Shades when both of them were desperate to prove they were more than tabloid fantasies dressed up as actors. People never understood what happened to them after those films. The world reduced everything to chemistry, seduction, marketing, fantasy. But fame creates intimacy in unnatural ways. When two people survive that level of public obsession together, they become tied to each other whether they want to or not. Nobody else truly understands the pressure because nobody else lived inside it. The interviews, the speculation, the endless scrutiny over every glance, every laugh, every rumor manufactured by strangers desperate to turn human beings into fictional characters. Jamie and Dakota survived all of that together. And survival creates trust faster than friendship ever could. That trust became dangerous. Because somewhere along the line, they stopped separating their creative ambitions from their emotional dependence on one another. The script had started as an escape, a private idea shared between two exhausted people who wanted ownership over something genuine, something by studio expectations. No scandals, no erotic marketing campaigns, no artificial chemistry designed by executives chasing ticket sales. Just a story they believed in. At least that was what Jamie thought it was. Now, sitting alone in that dimly lit study, he realized something horrifying. Maybe Dakota had never seen it the same way at all. The media would eventually simplify the situation into a neat narrative because that is what audiences crave. A misunderstanding, a conflict between former co-stars, a tragic breakdown of communication. But the reality was uglier. This was about power, about survival, about what happens when two people climb through the same fire but emerge with entirely different instincts. Jamie still believed loyalty should exist somewhere beneath the machinery of fame. Dakota had clearly learned another lesson entirely. In Hollywood, hesitation is death. Ownership belongs to whoever moves first. His phone buzzed constantly through the night. Messages from agents, friends, industry contacts fishing for information without directly asking for it. Are you all right? Did you know about this? Is the article accurate? But none of them mattered because the question haunting him was far simpler and far more devastating. When exactly had she stopped seeing him as a partner and started seeing him as an obstacle? By dawn, he had not slept at all. The city outside slowly brightened into that washed-out California morning light that makes everything appear artificial, as though even the sunrise itself is performing for an audience. Amelia noticed immediately. She knew the difference between ordinary stress and emotional collapse. She watched him move through the kitchen with the detached silence of someone physically present but mentally trapped somewhere else entirely. He barely touched breakfast, barely spoke, just stared into nothing while his mind dissected every detail again and again, searching for evidence he had missed. "You look ill," she finally said quietly. "I'm fine." But he wasn't. Because betrayal attacks identity before emotion. Jamie had built his entire public image around restraint, calmness, professionalism. He survived scandals by refusing to feed them, survived fame by remaining distant from its circus. People trusted him because he seemed stable in an industry addicted to chaos. Yet underneath that composure lived a flaw he rarely acknowledged. He trusted deeply once someone crossed his emotional walls. Too deeply. And people like that always suffer the hardest when loyalty collapses. His agent called before noon. The tone alone irritated him instantly. Controlled, cautious, strategic. "Listen carefully," the agent said. "Whatever you're feeling right now, do not respond publicly. No interviews, no statements, no social media. Let us manage this quietly." Manage. There was that word again. The favorite word of every Hollywood handler who treated human pain like a public relations inconvenience. Jamie almost laughed hearing it. Because what exactly were they trying to manage? The theft itself? Or the possibility that he might stop behaving like the agreeable version of Jamie Dornan everyone preferred? He opened the original script folder after the call ended. And there it was. Story by Jamie Dornan and Dakota Johnson. Two names sitting side by side on a title page like evidence from another lifetime. He stared at it for a very long time. Not because he wanted revenge. That was the misunderstanding everyone would eventually make. Jamie was not consumed by vengeance. What consumed him was grief. Grief for the version of their relationship he suddenly realized may never have existed outside his imagination. There is a specific kind of heartbreak reserved for moments when you discover someone remembers your shared history differently than you do. That realization fractures reality itself. Suddenly, every memory becomes unreliable. Did she ever truly intend to create it together? Did she try to contact him more than he realized? Did his own withdrawal push her toward this decision? Or had she simply learned how the game worked faster than he had? That uncertainty destroyed him more effectively than anger ever could. 2 nights later, fate handed both of them a stage. A major film gala in Los Angeles. Industry elites everywhere. Cameras waiting outside. Journalists hungry for tension. Dakota scheduled to appear. Jamie receiving recognition for an entirely separate project. Publicly, the evening had nothing to do with controversy. Privately, everyone attending knew exactly what possibility hung in the air. Hollywood pretends to hate drama while secretly arranging seating plans around it. He arrived late intentionally, not for theatrics, for control. Walking into those events always felt surreal to him. The lights, the forced laughter, the endless performance of success. People hugging each other while calculating status in real time. Compliments spoken THR. Clenched teeth. Entire careers balanced on the ability to appear untouchable. And tonight the atmosphere carried something sharper beneath its glamour. Anticipation. He could feel eyes following him before he even entered the main ballroom. Not sympathy. Curiosity. That was the brutal truth about celebrity culture. Human suffering only becomes valuable once it turns entertaining. Then he saw her. Across the room beneath the chandeliers stood Dakota Johnson, silver gown catching fragments of light while she laughed at something a producer had just said. Calm, composed, untouched. And that image alone nearly broke him. Because he had spent 48 hours barely sleeping while she appeared completely unaffected. Rationally, he knew appearances meant nothing. Public figures survive by mastering emotional camouflage, but pain rarely behaves rationally. For a moment, he considered leaving, not out of fear, out of self-preservation. Because the second they spoke, everything between them would become real in a way it had not yet been. Up until now, he still lived partly inside denial. Confrontation would destroy that final illusion forever. Then she turned. Their eyes met instantly, and something shifted. People nearby sensed it immediately without understanding why. Conversation slowed. Attention drifted. Humans are biologically wired to detect emotional danger long before words confirm it. The distance between Jamie and Dakota suddenly felt electrically charged, history and resentment collapsing into a single unbearable moment. He approached slowly, measured, controlled. The same way someone walks toward a cliff edge they already know will collapse beneath them. Her smile faded first. Not dramatically, just enough. Jamie, she said softly. His expression barely moved. Dakota. One word. Yet years existed inside the silence surrounding it. Up close, she looked exhausted beneath the glamour. He noticed that immediately despite everything. The careful makeup could not fully conceal the tension in her eyes. And suddenly another disturbing possibility entered his mind. What if she had been suffering through this too while he convinced himself she felt nothing? You shouldn't have found out like that, she said quietly. The sentence hit him harder than denial would have. Not because it apologized, because it confirmed everything. He gave a cold smile without humor. So it's true. Dakota inhaled slowly before answering. It's complicated. That phrase almost made him laugh aloud. Complicated. The favorite refuge of people standing inside situations built entirely from choices. You took the story. No, she replied immediately. I carried it when you abandoned it. The words landed like a slap. Because buried inside them existed a truth he did not want to examine. Jamie had disappeared emotionally during those years. Not entirely, but enough. Fame exhausted him in ways he rarely admitted publicly. After 50 Shades, he withdrew from Hollywood socially and creatively, desperate for normality, desperate to reconnect with parts of himself untouched by celebrity culture. Dakota moved differently. She adapted. She kept climbing, kept networking, kept surviving. Maybe she interpreted his withdrawal not as pain but surrender. You could have called me, he said. I did. You could have waited. Her expression hardened then for the first time that evening. For how long? That question silenced him, because neither of them truly meant the project anymore. They meant each other. How long was she supposed to wait emotionally for someone drifting further away every year? How long was he supposed to trust someone becoming increasingly fluent in an industry built on compromise? The script was only the surface wound. Underneath, it lived years of missed conversations, emotional distance, unresolved dependence, and unspoken resentment neither of them had ever confronted honestly. You think I betrayed you, Dakota said finally. Didn't you? No, she whispered. I think I survived you. That sentence shattered something inside him, because suddenly the narrative in his head became unstable. Until that moment, he viewed himself as the wounded party exclusively. But now another possibility emerged. Perhaps Dakota had spent years experiencing his silence as abandonment while he interpreted her ambition as disloyalty. Perhaps both of them had rewritten the same history from entirely opposite emotional perspectives. Around them, the gala continued pretending not to watch. But Hollywood always watches, especially when two people with unresolved history finally stop hiding it. Dakota lowered her voice further. The studio wanted full control. They wanted the project immediately. They told me attaching your name would complicate financing because nobody knew whether you still cared about it. And what did you tell them? Her eyes locked onto his. I told them you wrote the soul of it. That hurt even more, because it sounded honest. He looked away briefly, jaw tightening while years of frustration tangled themselves into something heavier and more difficult to categorize. The easy version of this story required a villain, but reality refused to simplify itself for him. Dakota did not look triumphant. She looked tired, like someone who had spent too long making impossible decisions alone. You should have fought harder for us, he said quietly. Her face changed instantly after hearing that. Not anger, sadness. I did, she replied. You just stopped noticing. The silence afterwards felt endless, not empty, final, because both of them suddenly understood the same devastating truth at exactly the same moment. This was never really about the script. The project merely exposed emotional fractures already years old. Two people who once trusted each other completely had slowly drifted into separate survival modes without realizing it until something valuable broke between them. And somewhere beyond the chandeliers, cameras, headlines, and industry gossip, something even more unsettling waited to emerge. Because neither Jamie nor Dakota yet understood who had truly benefited from turning them against each other in the first place. The frightening thing about Hollywood is not the lies. Everyone expects lies. The frightening thing is how easily truth becomes negotiable once enough money begins orbiting around it. By the time Jamie left the gala that night, the confrontation was already mutating into something neither he nor Dakota could control anymore. People who had not heard a single word between them were suddenly experts on the situation. Publicists whispered in corners. Producers exchanged knowing glances over champagne glasses. Journalists refreshed their phones waiting for leaks. An entire industry had sensed blood in the water, and Hollywood always feeds on emotional fractures faster than it repairs them. Inside the car, silence wrapped around him like concrete. The city lights streaked past the window in blurred ribbons of gold and white while the driver kept his eyes fixed firmly ahead, wisely pretending not to notice the tension radiating through the back seat. Jamie loosened his tie slowly, exhaustion pressing into his chest with suffocating weight. He had imagined that confronting Dakota would bring clarity. Instead, it had done something far worse. It complicated the pain.